In today's flow, we're going to cover a sitting variation facing back with a transition to option to kneeling facing front. We've got the short box on, and I just want to make sure there's enough room on this side for my hands to be able to hold on to. So with a larger hand, you're going to want to move it a little bit more away so the heel of the hand has some pressure on the spring side edge of that carriage. You can use thigh cuffs. I use them often. I have a set for my entire studio, so every student can use the thigh cuffs. Some of the exercises are really important to use these. This series you can get away with just using the double loops. So I'm going to set these aside. Now, if you are using the double loops, I do recommend thigh cuffs for students with larger calves and larger thighs, because if you use the big loops, obviously, if you don't have a set of thigh cuffs, you can use the big loops, but just make sure you put a grip around it so it's not sliding up and down during the transitions. The small loop is a perfect size for my thigh. It hugs quite well, and I'll show you. You can see I've got the swivel pulleys down. That's super important. If you don't have that option, I'll show you another option if you have the Hooked on Pilates soft foam arc, the Mini Max. So I've got it on. Make sure the hook is underneath the thigh, behind the knee. Roll down, engage the core, lengthen through the spine. So this is the basic movement. Pulling the knee in, engaging the abs as that happens. And that's the option we're going to start with. Let me show you, for those of you that don't have collapsible risers or risers that have adjustments going up and down, the Hooked on Pilates Mini Max is great. Let me grab two grippies. Actually, I'll grab one large grippy. This has grips underneath it, but I don't find them to be as secure as I want it to be. So I'm going to set the arc on top. Now, this is specifically for reformers that don't have the moving risers. So let me slip this through. Got the hook on the back. So I'm going to put my hips slightly forward from the top, that apex of the barrel, and I'm going to hold on. I'm going to place my other foot on the shoulder rest, and I'm going to do here. So if you're using this, this is the transition we're going to do for hip abducted. Really hold on tight, and then bring that out. So I'm abducting the hip now. For the side lying series, you've just got to make sure you're as secure as possible and do it that way. So that, again, even if you have the collapsible risers and you want to be a little higher, you can use the Mini Max arc. But as far as standard setup, I'm just going to keep it on the short box. So let's go over everything real quick, showing you all the different variations, the transition. And you saw me go through that transition. We'll go through that in a minute. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting my right thigh in. Now, there is going to be a time when we do put the opposite rope on the thigh. So it'll give us a little bit more opposing pull to the side for the hip abducted. There's tons of different variations you can do. I'm going to keep this one simple, and you'll see this. This was shot, I think, in a few videos a few weeks ago in one of my full-length classes using this one. But I didn't do anything other than standard. We're going to show you stable rotation, meaning we're going to keep one hand down, and then optional more rotation. So with no hands. I'm using a red. When I'm going through just the basics in most classes, I'm probably going to use a blue. For my stronger students who have a lot of power output and a strong core, I definitely use a red because I want them to feel that feedback from that strength and where to really stabilize. If the abdominals are not stabilized, you'll feel the hip flexors burn immediately. So don't forget, even though there's a lot to learn, with my students, I will tell them, go through the motions, get it done, and then clean it up, versus me forcing them to have all these like A through Z awareness, and let them just kind of experience it. And yeah, some of them are going to go, oh my God, my hip flexors are killing me. Well, it is a hip flexor exercise, but it's also to help stabilize the anterior joint capsule and prevent the hip flexors from overworking. We want to make sure we have some good core control. So I'm starting with both my feet on. You'll notice my sit bones are towards the front edge. And that's super important for safety because we don't want anybody toppling over into the springs. So I'm going to slowly always initiate the roll down with the sit bones forward instead of leaning back. So roll those sit bones forward. Hands are going to go down to that spring side edge of the carriage. Now, if you have really tight shoulders, please, by all means, do some shoulder mobilization. So leg starts extended and simply tucking the knee in. I'll show you 5 of those. You can add some long lever too by just going up in between. So there's so much you can do. Here's some knee circles going out, around, going in. And then reversing. Now you want to really challenge the student, have them take the other leg to tabletop, but for today, we're going to keep it down. But just please know your options. I'll show you the other side, and then I'll show you added rotation options. So if you're doing this along with me and just kind of experiencing these, make sure to find a resistance that doesn't make you grip too hard in the hip flexors. So again, do some shoulder mobilization if you need. So fully extend that leg, engage the core, and let's knee tuck for 5. Lengthening through that spine, trying not to sink into the shoulders. 4, 3, 2, and 1. So here is an added option for rotation with stable arm, unstable, so those are a couple nice options to really get the abdominals working through this flow. So let me show you. I'm going to take it off the left. I'm going to put the same strap on the right. Now, I've done it where I've had both feet in straps or thighs in straps or cuffs, and I've done it with double knee tucks and single, but that transition is kind of awkward, and I'm still playing around with that transition. But what I found is I like to have single leg for the transition. The transition comes best when you're strapped to the opposite rope, because when we flip around hands and knees or even side lying, it's going to be the same side, and I'll show you that in a moment. So I'm going to show you 3 hand positions. So I'm externally rotated in the hip, abs are engaged, and I'm pulling out to the side. Hand position 1, hand position 2, with one hand on the box, and hand position 3. Always push those elbows out. I'm going to bring my left leg forward more, abduct the hip for this position, and rest. So once you've done a few of those, and you don't need a ton of them, especially if you're going to put your students through a rotation. What might be nice, and I've done, is I'll do the cross strap hip abducted. I can add some rotation and then flip them around hands and knees or side lying. So I'll show you that transition of the flow. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to cross my feet. I'm going to initiate that roll down, and I'm going to do hands up. So when my hands are up, I don't want to go full roll back. I want to do partial roll back. Now I'm going to rotate away from the knee. So I'm going to abduct the hip and I'm going to rotate away and back. I'm always cueing right armpit to the left. Now I'm going to show you towards, which is very challenging because the body wants to laterally flex. You really have to cue left armpit forward, and I'll show you. Left armpit pulls forward as I abduct, and that's quite a challenge. Now, if you want to do that rotation partially stable, place one hand down and start, roll back, abduct the hip, and rotate. Showing you the opposite direction, abduct the hip, and rotate. So it's completely up to you whether you want to do all of them or you want to try different ones and see what you like best. So here's the transition. So I'll just do 3 reps of just the hip for 3, 2, 1. I'm going to use the spring to help pull me up, twist around, left foot on shoulder rest, hands on, and go right into hip abducted. Now here is for your students that have good stability. Organize that right shoulder, arm is out, abduct the hip. You can transition from abducted to underneath. You can add flexion and extension. You can do that stable, flexion, extension, or opposite of what I said, extension, flexion. Knee circles unstable, reversing knee circles, single arm. So there is the transition from sitting facing back hip flexion to quadruped to single arm. So now I'm going to show you facing back hip abducted, and then we're going to go into a side lying series. I've done this long box variation. Instead of having hand on the spring side edge, I just do hand behind head and put my tricep on the long box edge. And I'll show you that in a moment. I'm going to stay here because I want to demo to the camera, even though I'm dying on this side. I don't recommend doing 10, 15 minutes of this. I do recommend doing maybe 3 or 4 minutes, so you're not overworking your students, especially when this is new. So starting up, rolling back, hands on, and then hip abducted. Adding the option of straight leg if you want. Foot goes down, onto the shoulder rest, flip and down, lengthen your spine, soften that elbow, activate that pec and lat, and side lying, hip abducted, straight leg, hip abducted. It's as straight as I'm going to get today. Knee circles. So you can kind of see, you can go from facing back to side lying, and then finally finish off with your quadruped series. All right, so I'm going to step off and I'm going to change and show you if I get my toe caught under the other rope. Try not to do that. I'm going to show you the variation long box, as I just mentioned. So if you're going to do long box, you're not going to have the option for hands on the carriage, but it does provide a little bit more safety for a lot of students. The difference is that I really like the short box series because I can really get my foot up against shoulder rest and stabilize. So you need to try all these different variations and see which one you like best. And sometimes I'll do both. So I'm going to do left crossed, and I'm going to put the hook behind. Now, the great thing is if you're using the thigh cuffs, you can just unclip. The only problem with unclipping is where you're going to put it. That's what I've done before. That's the one nice thing about using the straps, is you can post them really easy. But if you do get that thigh cuff on and you can get it on and off easy, go ahead. All right, so I'm sitting fairly close, just like before. I can put my hands, I can put my hands on for a prep, take my hands off, do this. So these are the different arm options when we're doing the exercise. So I'll show you hands off, initiate with that roll back till you find that balance. There's your hips abducted, adding rotation. And flip the foot around, turn to face side lie, and here's that option for side lying. It's really a nice flow and circles. And reverse. Up, flip the foot around, turn, and here's your quadruped series long box. Hip abducted, knee tuck under, opposite arm out, under, abducted. So there's that transition using the long box. It's nice. Let me just show you. I'm going to cross the straps. And I'm going to show you double leg hip abducted just to kind of finish this up. Make sure if you have any questions about this, if I didn't cover something that you want to know with your specific reformer, remember, if this is your first video, I am on an 18-inch height. So there's a lot of different propping that I do with my students. If you feel your students don't have that core control, please put a sticky ball back there. And I've done that with my students and have them rest on that sticky ball back there. If you have one of my 3 or 5 inch spine arc, or you have an ab mat, you can also use those as a prop. My goal is being a teacher is to make sure that myself with my spine injury, or my students that are learning some exercises, I want to make sure we're using the adequate propping to make them successful versus having them feel that they can't do something and they're straining to try to do it. So make sure you watch the video on propping. You can just go to the search menu on the My Account page or use the magnifying glass at the upper right hand corner and just type in propping, and you'll see anything that's tagged propping. And you can start learning some more ways to prop your students. So I'm going to do hands back, roll back, and I'm going to do knee circles. So here is where I was talking before, and I'm going to do single leg. So there's some options. This is what it looks like to flip around. Hands and knees. Good. So this one, what you're going to notice is your range of motion, if you're going to do both, is limited. That's why I'm not a super fan of that, but I've done it many times. For that, I just need to pitch myself forward a little bit more and pitch myself back more. That's how I was getting more range. Knees at the back. And then I've got a little bit more range if I'm going to do it that way with both. Or you can always unclip, slide out if you're going to transition to that. So play around with those. I've got some more with option propping. If you know why we use dumbbells in roll down series, it's to help assist. So if you're going to do this, and I talked about propping with the ball behind your back, if you grab 3-pound dumbbells and you do that, whether it's single or double, that's going to also give them 6 pounds, if they're 3 pounds each, forward of their core to help them not go into their lower back as they're strengthening their core. So enjoy these different series. Let me show you, for those of you who not really sure what I was talking about. Here's my 5-inch spine arc. I used basically the ab mat as a foundation, but this helps. When the thicker end is to here, you're a little higher. Thinnest end to you, you can even be lower. And you can do some nice extension, come up, knee tuck. So it's really limitless. So propping dumbbells are going to help create more of a stable environment for them to work in when they're learning this. And even with that rotation, the dumbbells help a lot because it's pulling them up a little bit. So try it without and with both propping and dumbbells, and try all those different transitions, try different spring tensions. See what it's like to have the swivel pulleys up. I've done it with the swivel pulleys up. That pull down is decreased. So therefore, it's an assist. It isn't as much pull. So you can, sometimes I'll start my classes, and let's say I'm going to do them all on a blue. I'm going to start them with the swivel pulleys up, or the collapsible risers up, if that's what you have. And then I'll take it down midway, have them do a couple, take it all the way down. So just to get that positioning of the swivel pulleys to either challenge or assist them. Thanks for watching.